Okay, so we'll get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is the FEM event for November, and we're welcoming Ben Peele to our session today from Portfolio Metrics. I'm very excited, to be back, new format, signing into Eventbrite, which hopefully means that everyone's getting reminders and seeing all the other events coming up in the next few months, because we're trying to publish 4 months in advance so that you can all get them in your diary. So hopefully, we'll start to get some really great great content out there for you and people seeing it, which I'm really excited about. That's why we built the website and changed everything around. So thank you for those people that have joined us today. I'm just going to give a little bit of an intro then to Ben, and I'm going to hand over then to him to do his session. So Ben's from Portfolio Metrics. He's got 25 years of experience in the financial services industry. And at Portfolio Metric, he primarily focuses, his primary focus is fully understanding the needs of both existing and potential advisor partners. He oversees all parts of the UK business, including investment management, business development, client service, marketing and operations. And he prides himself on anticipating trends in the advice profession long before they become reality. Some of the white papers he's written have been featured extensively in the financial press and been downloaded by thousands of advisors across the globe. And I'm sure that you've probably heard him speak at certain things in the past, and if not, very aware of Portfolio Metrics and what they're doing. So I'm going to hand over to Ben just to get things started today, and then we can have some Q&A afterwards as well with Ben if you have questions. And I'm going to try and think of some questions just in case no one else does that, because you never know whether anyone's going to want to come on and speak. But again, thanks for joining us today, and I'm going to hand over to Ben to get started.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you for having me and for the nice intro. So listen, I think what I propose to do today is just talk through a few slides, but I'm definitely going to try and avoid death by PowerPoint. And by all means, pop questions as we go along in the chat box, and maybe Gretchen, if you could moderate that, and then just if there's something I need to answer then and there, then I'll try and do that. Otherwise, very happy to take questions at the end. And let's say any question. I mean, I think one of the things which, as Gretchen alluded to, we spend a lot of time trying to put ourselves in an advisor's shoes. So we are obviously a provider, along with the many other hundreds of providers out there. But I think we're quite unusual in trying to actually think about how advisors have to go about their day job and the various systems they have to use and the pressures on their business and their teams and their staffs. And that's what drives a lot of the white papers we write. And also, it's always us pulling together the insights from advisors rather than us sort of just pontificating about what we think about things. So that's a bit of an intro. Let me just share screen, hopefully, and then I'll show a few slides and we will get going. Okay. If someone can confirm they can see that, that would be helpful. Okay, thumbs up from Claire, good start. All right, so the value of advice, what does that actually mean? So this is the white paper that I wrote, and actually, don't feel like you've been sold something stale here, but I actually wrote this probably 3 years ago, but it's still very, very pertinent in terms of the conclusions in there. So the first thing to say, this is not another consumer duty fest, right? I wrote this before consumer duty was even a twinkle in the eye of the FCA. So this is not a consumer duty tick box exercise. Second thing to say is we at Portfolio Metrics are completely convinced that advisors add a huge amount of value to their clients. I'm a consumer of financial advice myself. I happily pay my advisor every year. So we've no doubt about that. However, my question is, I think there are some advisors, even post-consumer duty, who may not have fully assessed and most importantly, evidenced that value which they undoubtedly add to their clients. So that's kind of was the genesis of why we wrote this white paper. So in this, we've got survey input from 230 odd advisors that we work with across various different regions. So that was a good starting point. We've got 3 case studies. And again, you can download this and I can send Gretchen post the call a link to access the full white paper if you want to dig into the details. But we've got 3 case studies from advice firms. And then Beyond that, it said it's been our most popular white paper we've ever written. It's been downloaded by advisors all over the world. And as I said, it's been featured in the press lots of times and continues to be, keeps resurfacing, which is generally a good sign that you've written something which has got some legs. So that's a bit of background about it. But the way that I kind of frame this is we start with some hard numbers, because obviously having these is useful to actually evidence your value. But I think it's only the starting point. So what are those numbers? So this is Vanguard. They reckon that a good advisor can add 3% per annum after fees. And obviously that's a big number, if that's right. That's net returns to clients. And in the white paper at the back, in the appendix, you've got the kind of the breakdown as to how they do that. But it's kind of the things you might imagine: asset allocation, rebalancing, those type of things, which drives the majority of that. And a lot of that is behavioral, making sure your clients don't make a misstep to basically unsettle their financial plan. So that's Vanguard. So they kick off with 3%. Next up, you go to Russell Investments, who trump Vanguard, and they say 4.4%. And actually, they're talking about much the same things in terms of what's driving the bulk of those numbers of 4.4%. But let's switch away from kind of industry participants and take a slightly different lens. So now you've got the International Longevity Centre, the ILC. And this is really important here, because they say that clients who take advice end up with 50% more wealth, right? Which is a big number versus their non-advised peers. And here's a very important punchline: the benefits of that advice outweigh any costs. Because there's a lot of noise, I think, in the financial press about advisor fees. And actually, we've done a separate webinar for our Portfolio Metrics advisor community on this topic. And we had some really great insights from that, which I'll share a bit later. But I personally think that it's very easy. It's a very easy stick to beat advisors with. But I actually think that completely overlooks the benefits which they're giving to their clients, which more than outweigh the cost. So this is a useful data point to have on that topic. And then the last one is actually an academic study, so from Canada, the University of Montreal. And here they're saying even bigger numbers. So an advised client, 2.73 times bigger savings pot. I mean, that's a massive number over 15 years. And even over a much shorter time frame, it's still materially bigger than an unadvised client. So the two things those last two stats really bring home to me is that kind of the importance of ongoing advice. One-off advice is better than no advice, but ongoing advice is definitely better than one-off advice, is my view. So I think, as I said, that's starting with some stats, but I personally think stats miss a lot of what the end client values, and certainly don't, we're now heading into territory which doesn't get covered by Consumer Duty. So I'm not actually going to say we haven't set up a poll, but I'm just going to give you a bit of a chance to think about this yourself before I show you the results from our survey. So what we did is we had one of our younger advisor roundtables where we got them together and we came up with a list of attributes which we thought that advisors added value. And we asked them to debate that and to explain that. And then we expanded the list. And then we sent that expanded list to, the 230 odd advisors who completed this. And we gave them a list of 20 attributes to choose from. And in their case, we said, right, you have to pick your top 5. You only have to pick 5, no cheating. So pick your top 5. And then that drove a chart, which I'm about to show you in terms of what advisors thought was the most valuable part of their offering for their clients. So I'll give you a chance to play along at home, as it were. Here's kind of, I don't know, it's 8 if my maths is correct. Yeah, so 8 things to choose from. But have a think to yourself about which of those 8 do you think are, pick 3, the most important as part of your value proposition when you're presenting that to clients. So I'll give you 20 seconds to give that a bit of thought. And then I'll show you the outcome of the survey, which we got from speaking to those 200 plus advisors. There are obviously other things here which advisors do, but we had to kind of limit it without blowing the slide up with a long list. Okay, so let me show you. So first of all, just by we broke it into buckets. Now this is kind of a bit of a rudimentary exercise, but if we start at the bottom, this segment down here, the 30%, so building the financial plan is something which you'll all be very, very familiar with. And I think that's kind of traditional financial planning, which is great. Then putting the plan into action, that's obviously part of that the implementation phase. And then the ongoing service, we talked about the importance of that. But you'll notice over here, the dark blue, over a third of it, these attributes went into a bucket which we called soft skills, for lack of a better word, right, in terms of, because they don't come under, I guess, traditional financial planning metrics. So let me show you the full list now. Now, there's a lot of information on that page. Let me just maybe point yourself in a few directions. So you can check off against your own list, but empathy was the standout winner, from the advisors who responded. 3/4 of them had it in their top 5. So that was the clear winner. Then you've kind of got, in bronze and silver position, you've got life goals, peace of mind, and simplify coming in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th spot. And then it starts to fall away. Now, this is the list of which we started with. So I think it's like 20 attributes down the left-hand side. What's interesting, I thought, as well as kind of obviously what comes out on top up here, so the things up here, and you'll notice that these are the color coding is which bucket they sit in. So you'll notice that 2 of the top 3 sit in this soft skills bucket. So it's not things which you can put a pound value on or a percentage value or what have you. So I think that is interesting. But then if you go down the thing, and this is not unfortunately to scale, because otherwise it would be quite difficult to see the smaller bars. But all these things, less than 10% of advisors selected these things down here. Consolidation of kind of broader plans, cost conscious, and interesting charitable advice. Like not a single advisor out of 230 had that in their top 5, which I was quite surprised by personally. But that's what their data said. So as I said, this was our starting point. We had the survey, great, that was the starting point. But then we wanted to dig into a bit deeper on that. So as part of this, we gave the advisors a chance, like a free text box, to kind of just comment on 2 things. One of which is what do we miss, which I'll show you shortly. And the other thing is, what do you feel strongly about from amongst these choices? And a lot of the messaging which came through was about moving it away from investments. I think, the world definitely gone from advice industry to an advice profession. I think there's a big move in the direction of financial planning, holistic financial planning. So investments is only one small piece of the puzzle. So I think that definitely came through loud and clear. So these are some of the quotes we got back from the advisors who responded to our survey. So, the best fund won't change a client's life, but good planning will. 100% agree with that. This is more about kind of self-preservation. If you only tie your value to investment returns, as soon as those go the wrong way, and obviously the last couple of years have been challenging, then that potentially puts your relationship with the client at risk. Down here, same comment really, picking funds is less sticky than actually becoming that kind of trusted partner. And then here about if your service is differentiated, actually you don't need to worry about performance and indeed also about fees, as we'll come to in a little bit. And then lastly, this is the old adage of, value versus cost. And this is something which I firmly believe in. If you can evidence the value, then the actual cost, as long as it's sensible, becomes a non-issue pretty quickly. So those are some of the things which came out of the feedback we had from advisors. But then, as I said, we also said to them, what do we miss? Because it's only, we had 20, and then we're like, but there must be more things out there. And I'd like you to think about that, because I'll ask you as well shortly if there's anything which we missed from the list. But I've kind of broken what we missed into 4 buckets, but I think these are all really important. I'm really glad we had that feedback. So the first one is about communication. It's a very noisy world we live in. There's information everywhere, but actually keeping your clients informed but not overwhelmed is a very important piece of an advisor's job. And then basically providing clarity. Because the reality is, I imagine most of your clients are not financial experts, and therefore, actually, they're trusting you to do the job for them, but they still need to understand what's going on, particularly in the regulatory perspective. So communication was one. Second one was sounding board. I think this is really important. They run all their decisions past me. So the advisor in question, the client asked him not whether he could afford to buy a car, but what color he should buy the car in, right? And that obviously extends well beyond financial advice, but it's a good sign of actually the high regard in which advisors are held and being that trusted ear. And I think the point here is that generally advisors get told stuff that almost no one else is told. It's of a unique position in terms of that trust which they're given by their clients. And then the last 2, honesty and integrity. I think to me, this is a given, which is probably why we didn't have it in that list. But obviously there is that 0.05% of bad apples that, unfortunately give advisors a bad name from time to time. So I think being interested in them as clients rather than their money, agree with that. And then the big one, telling them news they don't want to hear. Because obviously sometimes they can't continue to live the lifestyle they're living if they want to not run out of money. And so this was a feedback from one of the firms we work with in the UK. And he was like, listen, it's not fun part of the job to do, but it's a really important part of the job to do. And then lastly, which is a really good one, and again, counterintuitive, which is why I didn't have it on the original list, is encouraging clients to spend money, right? They spend their whole life saving, to get to this point of retirement. But now, if they've done a good job, and if your cash flow modeling says that they can, they should be out there spending their money and having a good life and ticking off the bucket list and, you know, seeing the grandchildren, whatever it might be, however they want to spend their money. But I think that is something which, again, as one advisor, it's not good for my profits, but it is good for my clients, and that's what comes first. So I think those were the kind of 4 things which we missed as part of this. So yeah, so that was what we missed. I promised you a quick insight into case studies. So the point here about this slide is that there's no right way of doing this, right? I'm going to show you 3 completely different examples of 3 firms which we work with, just to show you that there's no right way of doing it, but as long as you can actually evidence it, then I think you're in great shape. So the first one is a firm up in sort of Northamptonshire, very kind of process focused. There's a step in the chain for every client. Every client has to go through every step, and almost no deviation from that. But that's where they assign a lot of their values. It's a very robust process which every client goes through. They're big Kinder enthusiasts, they're big cash flow modeling enthusiasts, and they kind of will take the client through the journey and then back to the beginning and repeat that each year, right? That's great. I've met some of their clients, they're all very happy, but you know, that won't work for everyone. But so example 1 is very much process focused. And again, in the white paper, there's more details on all of these case studies. If you want to go into it, you can see details on the firms themselves. Second one, this is a numbers person. This is a single advisor practice. They run about £75 million worth of assets, and they're all about the numbers. So they really drill it down into facts, figures. They use this tool called EDVOA, which is a third-party tool. You can Google it. I think it stands for evidencing and demonstrating the value of advice. So nothing to do with white paper, but just happens to kind of play in quite nicely. And the way that they basically construct it in the same way that those stats I gave you earlier from Vanguard and Russell Investments do is they put in all the things about where they think the advisor adds value, then net off the fee the advisor charges on an annual basis. And that gets you this advisor added value number, the AAV. So in his case, it's 2.71% per year post his fees. So again, it's a big number, more than offsets the fees. So that's someone who's done it really very much focused on hard numbers. And then the complete polar opposite is another firm. I think they're like a 4 advisor firm, about £200 million under management. They are no numbers anywhere near it. It's all about emotional connection. It's about EQ. It's about being that constant guide. It's about, and they really are the absolute epitome of ongoing service. You know, they say they deliberately have a smaller number of clients to have a much more involved relationship, and they might be catching up with their clients, you know, on a monthly basis, which I know is quite unusual for advisors, but they really make that a point of pride about always being accessible to their clients. So there's 3 completely different ways of evidencing your value. I'm not saying that any of them is right. I'm just saying you need to find one which resonates with you and play it in that way. So that is some of the case studies. And then the last couple of things. So this is just where we got to post the case studies, post the survey, post the feedback from advisors. We got to this list, the final attributes, which might be worth kind of saving for the future. So first bucket, building the financial plan. I've got them all listed out here, I won't read through them, but I've just highlighted one in each bucket, which is for me as a consumer of advice, why I actually value my advisor. You know, personalization, you know, I like the fact that his plan is built for me and my family, and it hasn't just been cut and pasted from somewhere else, and it's unique to me. So for me, in that list of attributes, that was the one which stood out. But again, it will depend on how your firm's set up and what your clients value the most. So then moving into the second bucket, the putting the plan into action. Again, completing the picture, just what I mean by that is often I think financial advisors sit at the center of everything, right? In terms of they might know the accountant and the solicitor and the tax advisor and everyone else, but they have this unique position right at the center of a client's life to be able to navigate that. And particularly post, sadly, when clients pass away, quite often I find that they're the people who are effectively asked to pull it all together for the family and for the inheritors and for the grieving family. So that's what I mean by completing the picture. But then for me, independence is really important in that list. You know, I don't want to be slammed into something just because it's tied to the advice firm. So that for me is very important. The third bucket, as I said, ongoing service. We've seen the stats about why that's important. So for me, is that consistency and continuity. I know that at certain points in the year, Neil will call me up and he'll say, Ben, you need to do this or you need to do that. And that's great. No problem at all. I love that fact that I don't have to think about it until I have to think about it, and he tells me I need to do it. And that's great. So I know that he'll be consistent and that continuity will be there. And then the final one, as you'll see, this is the one which kind of the most things in it, but the soft skills. So we've talked about empathy, we've talked about getting clients to spend, but the gift of time, that's another one for me, which is huge, right? I could 100%, I'm 100% capable of running my own financial plan, but I don't want to, because the limited spare time I have, I want to spend with my kids. So I'll happily trade money for time in that respect. And so the gift of time that I get back from not having to worry about this, same reason why I pay an accountant or whatever, because that to me is really valuable. So all those things under soft skills, like don't even try and put a price on them because you can't. But the point is, I think your clients will really value a lot of them, but they may not have thought about them because you may not have articulated to them. And I guess that's really the one takeaway from this white paper, is that kind of final column. I think the stuff on the left, a lot of that you'll be aware of, but the soft skills, I think, is where really it lands. So just quick one, if there's anything we missed, I won't stop here, but if there's anything we missed which you think is part of your business and your practice that isn't on that list of attributes, if we go back to it here, then please just chuck it in the chat, and happy to discuss that at the end when we do Q&A, because I'm always open to adding new things to this list, and I'm certainly sure I will have missed things because I'm not an advisor and I'm very aware of that. But yeah, so if there's anything which you think is really important to your business, then please pop it in the chat and we can pick it up at the end. But in the meantime, I'm going to push on to almost finish up. So this is a really important part of the white paper. So obviously what advisors think is very important, but that's only one perspective, right? What do clients think? So what we did is we took the output, which is that graph I showed you earlier. Actually, that's not true. We didn't do that. We sent the same list of 20 to the clients of the advisors that we work with and got them to answer it, and then produced the same graph, which we then laid side by side with what the advisors thought. And I'll show you that now. And the good news is that there weren't too many disconnects, but there were some. So just to explain how this one works, so the dark blue is what the clients responded. The light blue is what advisors responded. So that's the kind of the chart you saw earlier. Now, interestingly here, you could see good news is the number one, there's very little disconnect. That's great. Number two, you start to see that peace of mind comes in very clear second for clients, but actually it's a bit off for advisors. Interesting, I was surprised by this. Cash flow modeling, very highly valued by a lot of clients. You know, over half had that in their top 5, but only 18% of advisors did. I suspect that's because almost the advisors I know almost kind of view it as a given as part of their practice. So that's something which maybe explains that disconnect. The gift of time, again, super important for clients, not really picked up by advisors. So again, that soft skill element coming through here. And then I mentioned it earlier, charitable advice. Over a third of clients had it in their top 5, 0 advisors had it in their top 5. So I thought that, I kind of was surprised, and that was borne out when we did the client sense check. And then you can see as we go, when the light blue bars are higher, as we go towards this section, you know, these are things which advisors think are valuable, which maybe clients think are less valuable. So it's a question about sort of that check and balance between what you think versus what they think. And then you can see, like down here, the things which actually seemingly neither of them had their top 5. So I think, you know, it definitely, however you go about doing this, don't assume that what you think is valuable is matched by what your clients think. There does need to be a bit of testing on that. So yeah, that's the clients. And again, there's a bit more detail in the white paper on that, but that's just a kind of one-page snapshot of it. So I mentioned earlier, we did one of our advisor community webinars on the topic of fees. Unsurprisingly, very well attended, as you might imagine. We had 160 odd advisors on that one. I can't imagine why they dialed in for that. But we had four very good guest speakers, all of whom were advisors. And I've pulled out some quotes from this, either from the guest speakers and or from people who participated on the call, because this to me goes to the real center of value, nothing to do with consumer duty, but just actually around the importance of financial advice to any client. So this is a controversial statement. For those of you who know Julie Flynn from Bree, but I mean, she stands behind this. You know, she thinks advisors are chronically undercharging. Now, that's a controversial statement, I would say, given, you know, a lot of the press is writing about how advisors should lower fees. I personally don't think they should lower fees, but my point is Julie thinks that you're undercharging for the most part. So that's an interesting statement to kick us off with. This was a comment from one of the people who attended. So they weren't a guest speaker, but they're like, you're often saving them 3 times per annum what you're charging them, in terms of tax efficiencies or, forward planning. So don't be shy about charging appropriately for that. This one makes me laugh. It sounds a bit like a self-help quote, but I think it is valuable. The only person who has the right to determine your value is you. And I think that's right. Like if you have clients who try and chip you on a price, there'll be other clients you can go and cover. Like just don't actually sell yourself short, because the moment you've done that once, it almost opens the floodgates. So I think that's an important one. This is actually a quote from Brett Davidson. I'm sure lots of you will know Brett, but he is an advisor coach. And his view is they're not looking for cheap, they want quality. And that goes back to the whole kind of value versus cost. But this last one is the one I want to leave you with, which I think is, again, a very true statement. Advisors have the power to change people's lives. Right? Dramatic statement, but I think a true statement. So charge for that accordingly, right? I don't think any other profession can claim that they can have the power to change people's lives. I mean, I guess maybe arguably doctors, but do you know what I mean? I think it from a kind of white collar professional, I think it's very hard to claim that, but I think advisors genuinely can do that. So I don't think therefore they should be discounting their services just because the press is whacking them with a stick, which shouldn't exist. So that's my event. I rant over about advisor fees. Up to you what you do with the fees, but that's just a few little snippets for you. So let me finish up and then I'll take questions. So I think just 3 things to leave you with. Yes. Bonus prize, if anyone can tell me who that quote is from. Quality is remembered long after the price is forgotten. Anyone want to be brave and have a guess? No. Okay. So the answer is it's the founding member of the Gucci fashion house, apparently. And I think the point there is that, yes, their handbags cost more than a handbag from somewhere else, or whatever it might be they're selling you. But the point is they tend to last substantially longer, and they tend to make people feel very happy. So I think it's a bit of a random quote to chuck in here, but I think the quote is relevant to the content. Second thing is, and I made this point when I gave you that list of soft skills, don't waste your time trying to put a number on peace of mind, right? You won't be able to get a number for it in pounds or percentage terms. It doesn't mean your clients don't value it. And the last one, I think, is still very true. There's obviously lots of press articles about how the robots are coming for all of us and they're going to replace financial advisors and AI is going to take over the world. And I think AI will take over large portions of the world, don't get me wrong. But I still think that advice is perhaps the most personal of any profession. And so it is a people business, right? And I personally think it's about how your advice makes them feel, which goes back to the intangibles. So I think, I wouldn't worry if I was you about being replaced by AI just yet. So a 3-step plan, if you haven't done this and you're not consumer duty up to the eyeballs, assess and document where you feel like you add value. Step 1. Crucial, step 2, check that this matches with your clients, right? Does it resonate with them? When you say, right, here's a list of 20 things I do for you, I think these 5 are the most important, and they like, Gretchen, are you crazy? I don't know what that is. That can't be important to me. And obviously, unfortunately, there won't be a consensus between all of your clients, but I think you'll work out pretty quickly if there's something which you have high up in your list, which none of them care about, and vice versa. When they see the full list, there might be something languishing at number 14, which you don't think is that important, but actually they think is absolute gold dust. And I think once you've done that and refined it, you'll get to where I think, and it's going to be completely unique to every person on this call, because that's what I love about advisor businesses. They're all different, right? So that's why, you need to make it personal to you, I think is the point, and you and your firm. And then once you've done that, just ignore all the noise in the press. It's a very easy thing for journalists to write about, but actually, I think personally, they're completely missing the point, and just get it okay by your clients and then don't think about it again. So I think, yes, that's a bit of a background about us, but this is not a sales job. So that's, yeah, I'll stop there, Gretchen, and take any questions there are.
I'm on mute. Let me get off mute. Thank you, Ben. I'm pleased you said that. Sorry, everyone. I'm suffering from a cold, so I'm just going to get back into my speaking zone now, rather than sniffling in the background. The thing I wrote down, and we'll see if there's any other questions from anyone else, but there isn't any that's coming at the moment. So the thing I'd written down was I think it's really, really interesting how the advisors kind of put like hadn't put asset allocation or like cash flow planning at the top kind of priority list, and the clients had put that as kind of one of the key things that they benefit. And I think you used the words that, you know, I think that's just almost like, is it a given, because that's our day to day, so we don't necessarily think about it as like being that added value piece. And maybe there's an awful lot of focus on the softer skills being the added value piece, etc. So that's really interesting. And then my question to you was going to be, have you seen advisors in your firms kind of taking this assessment, you know, actually running it through with clients? Because I think this is the issue that maybe I think businesses have come a little bit unstuck with Consumer Duty is, you know, make a list of what you think is the value, but how are you going to check that that is the value, and how are you going to sort of sort of document that, you know, as you say, and putting value on peace of mind is almost impossible. And I think that's where people start to come a little bit unstuck with the Consumer Duty kind of piece that they need to do or should have done already. But a lot of people are sort of still, how am I going to document it almost?
Yeah, okay. So just to take your first question around asset allocation. So yes, listen, I think it's well understood that asset allocation is the primary driver of investment returns. And therefore, I think every advisor will have that sort of drilled into them. And therefore, they probably would just assume that it will be a given. But I think maybe if the clients have heard that message and they don't see it feature in the top 5, they might be a bit surprised. So I think, yeah, that's a fair point. To your second question around how do you mesh this with Consumer Duty? I mean, being honest, I'd almost treat it as a separate exercise. I mean, Consumer Duty it's a well-intentioned hoop, but it is nonetheless a hoop that you have to jump through. I think, I mean, as always with the regulator, the ethos behind the regulation is very well-intentioned, but the practicalities of, you know, evidencing it and enforcing it and all those other things, I think is really hard, you know, because every advice firm is different. How do you have kind of a one-size-fits-all approach for regulation, then stick it on 5,500 advice firms? So in a sense, I'd get yourself Consumer Duty compliant over here, which I'm sure you've all done already because you've done the homework on time. And then actually beyond that, it is a different discussion with the clients, because you can't chuck things like, you know, the gift of time into Consumer Duty matrices or matrices. So I think then it's a separate question. And then so I think to answer your question, what our advisors have done is they've taken that list of whatever it was, I think the final list is 25 odd attributes. And they've just almost gone through and gone, do I do this? Yes, no. If no, do I want to do this? Like, do I see value to adding that to my practice? If I don't, then just put a line through it. Because the point is, you haven't got time to do all 25 things on that list. And also you don't want to do all 25 things on that list because you want to center in on certain parts of that, which again is why it's unique to the advice business. So I think then at that point, almost once you've kind of got your top 10 or whatever the number is, then it's that point I'd go and test it with maybe some of your biggest clients, right? Or your smallest clients, probably just take both ends of the spectrum and see if it resonates. And then once you feel like you've kind of got enough of a consensus and you've made sure there's no massive outliers there, then you can probably send it to the broader clients and just say, listen, this is where we feel like we add value. And again, give them the chance to feedback. Say, listen, if you think we're missing something which you really value, then please let us know. And if you disagree, then let us know. It doesn't mean you're duty bound to change your overall service model, but at least then you've got some feedback. So I think, you know, I understand why a lot of clients, they come to advisors because they're not financial experts and they just want someone to look after it for them, right? So then going back to them and asking them for opinion can sometimes be a bit dangerous, right? But I think if it's done with the right intentions and you can say, listen, this isn't not a compliance tick box exercise. I'm genuinely interested and keen that you understand the value of what I do. Because quite often with feedback we've had from the advice firms we work with, when they take their list to go and see clients, they're like, oh yeah, you do that, but actually I'd forgotten that you do that, or I didn't realize that you did that, and therefore they hadn't been ascribing any value to that. I can't think of any advisor who's come back to me and said, I've shown my clients that list and they've thought I was less valuable, right? If you know what I mean? I think it's going to remind them about all the many, many things you do for them. Sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, sometimes once in 5 years. But those things all aggregate up into a hugely valuable offering.
And can people get this white paper from Portfolio Metrics?
You can go on the website, or if you allow me to try and multitask, which, as you know, I'm not very good at, I can try and find a link and stick it in the chat, which will enable you to download it. Just give me
Ben, I'll do that because I've just downloaded it.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for bailing me out, Claire, because I almost certainly got that wrong.
But yeah, I think and maybe people listening would be really interested in seeing that, so that'd be great. And we can maybe email it around as well to members, so when we send the video around, then we can do that as well.
I think the idea is, like most of our white papers, they're designed to be evergreen in terms of, because the stats in there, it's not like something which goes out of date. So actually, although it's 3 years old, I'm still being asked to present about it. I don't know if any of you are PFS members. We'll be presenting on that at the moment on their part of their autumn roadshow. So
yeah,
if anyone's going to if you're going to the one in, is it Vale of Glamorgan? I think it is, later this month. But yeah, so you'll see us presenting on that. But again, we were asked to present because the PFS felt it was such an important topic in a kind of post-consumer duty world. We do say the title of it, this is not a consumer duty fest. But white paper.
You can't avoid that it is sort of linked now, given all of the conversations around value of advice. So I think that's why it's probably come to the fore again.
It is. What I didn't want to do was people turn up to that session at the PFS and immediately think they're going to fall asleep because it's another consumer duty. Because the point, I think in your intro, you kindly made the point that we try and anticipate trends before they become a reality. I wrote this 3 years ago, saying at some point the regulator is going to come and ask you to justify your value. Like, it is useful back then, like all the webinars which were happening in June or July of this year. It's a bit like, well, sorry, it's already here now. Cool. Anything else which I can help on, or which you wanted to ask?
So I don't know if anyone else has got any other questions. I mean, I think that pop them in the chat or raise your hand and shout out. But I think it's been really useful to run through, definitely. So thank you, Ben.
It's a pleasure. And yeah, if there's any other questions, just please contact me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me via the website, our website, if needs be. Claire's popped the thing in the chat. So yeah, thank you for having me, and please get in touch if I can help anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks everyone for coming today. We do have another session in December and in January. I think April's our break month. We decided tax year end would be a really bad idea. So we will be having monthly. So make sure you've signed up so that you get your reminders. I think the reminder's been the key thing that we've been able to put through that Eventbrite, so that people actually, remember that they're meant to come along. So it's really good to see everyone here today, and thank you for supporting FEM, and thank you, Ben, for supporting FEM. It means a lot to me. And yeah, hope to hopefully see you next month, everyone. Oh, I should say we do actually have another event this month, which is the Honesty Hour. So it is only available for people who are members, specifically a private event to come along and share anything that might be going on with you, anything you might want to talk about, to try and speak to your peers and get some guidance and friendly advice. So if you can come along to that, then that's in November, and you should have received an email about that. If you haven't, then message me and we'll make sure you get the link. Thank you, everyone.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.